top story today then, the UK and the US have carried out joint airstrikes, as you heard in the news, against Houthi rebels in Yemen. Foreign Secretary Lord David Cameron says he is confident they've made progress in degrading the rebels' ability to launch attacks on ships in the Red Sea.
Well, the strikes that we conducted with the US targeted an underground storage site as well as a missile and surveillance capabilities, with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada and the Netherlands. It is now the second joint operation between us and the US.
We're joined by the former Royal Navy Commander, Rear Admiral Chris Parry. Chris, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Did you sort of expect a second strike? Because as usual, certain people are saying, well, it didn't obviously work the first time. What's going to happen the second time? I tended to quote you by saying, we need to be aware that these are backed by Iran, which is part of that axis that is bringing fear around the world, so something has to be done.
Yeah, good morning, Jeremy. Morning, Rosie. This is part of obviously an ongoing campaign. I think the first attacks degraded the capability by about 25%. They've still got quite a lot on the ground. They're trying to hide a lot. And I think, as Rosie just mentioned, last night they attacked an underground facility as well. That would almost certainly have been an American weapon that did that. I think the United Kingdom, the United States, and several of its allies who aren't actually taking part in the strikes are committed to preventing this capability by the Houthis to interdict international shipping. And of course, the attacks have continued over the last week. So as long as they're attacking shipping, they're going to get attacked in Yemen.
Yeah, so Chris, what do you think the strategy is here? Because now the second set of strike action, presumably, if the Houthis carry on, we'll have to carry on the same.
Yeah, I think it's been a proportionate and measured response so far. I think as the Houthis uncover their weapons and they're seen by surveillance, I think they're obviously contributing to the target set. And as soon as the US and the UK see targets that they can reasonably take out without collateral damage, I think they go for it. And I think the key to this is actually understanding and mapping where all these capabilities are, and then obviously striking them when you can.
What will it take, do you think, for that to be successful and for that to happen quickly?
Well, I don't think it is a quick solution because, it's not an all-out assault on Yemen or indeed the Houthis. We're taking selective action in order to prevent those missiles being deployed against ships in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb. So it's a proportionate response. And I'm afraid the agenda is being set by the Houthis. The more missiles they bring into the front line, the more they're going to get attacked.
Chris, I think it's really interesting when we speak to people like you, because you would understand as a military expert that there are phrases that people throw around: mission creep, war fatigue in Ukraine, and you listen to people quite rightly saying, I'm in the middle of a cost of living crisis here, I can't see a doctor or a dentist, I can't put food on my table, and people start to question our seeming involvement in, wherever it is in the world. And I think it's really important to keep saying, these things are going to happen. And unless we take proportionate stands, really important point, in a controlled way, anything could happen. But people will accuse me by saying that online. They'll say, he's warmongering, Chris Parry. What would you say?
Yeah, OK. Well, I always say to people that, people who are involved in the military aren't interested in wars. It's a real pension trap, to tell you the truth. We're in the business of trying to keep the peace. And the best way to keep the peace is to be prepared for war and to basically take action at the earliest possible moment to stop people actually creating a new normal. If we'd have said in 1934, for example, we're not going to let Hitler reoccupy the Rhineland, then we wouldn't have had a Second World War. And I'm afraid to say, as we've discussed many times, guys, we've said we're in an existential crisis right now with totalitarian regimes who wish to do us harm. And that includes Russia, China, Iran and North Korea. And what we're seeing here is Iran trying to flex its muscles through its proxies. If we let the Houthis get away with it, the Iranians will start thinking about closing the Straits of Hormuz in the same way. The Chinese will be all over the South China Sea, and the Russians will prevent people going into the Arctic. So, all this sort of stuff is symptomatic of a wider crisis. And the simple answer to everybody is, look, we've got a cost of living crisis, we've got all these other issues. They're not about defense. But if you don't get defense right, you don't get to make choices about any of these other things.
Yeah, Chris, you talk about the wider crisis. I think that's what some people are worried about. There's an understanding that there is a danger in not acting, of course, and just sort of saying, look, we're going to step back and, you know, keep acting the way you are and there'll be no repercussions. But as we then take a second load of strikes, are you nervous that we could play a part in escalating this conflict rather than de-escalating?
No, Rosie, we're not escalating. We're trying to contain this crisis. You know, all the escalation has been done by Hamas, by the Houthis, potentially by Hezbollah as well. These are all Iranian proxies. We've got an Iranian regime right now, which is on its last legs. I'm forecasting this year a real crisis in Iran. So they're projecting outwards all their internal problems. They have to be told, look, the international arena is not a place for you to play out your neuroses back at home. You know, they've got a new supreme leader probably coming in at some stage because, you know, Ayatollah Khomeini is not going to last forever. They've got a young population that doesn't like being run by mullahs. And the whole Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is very nervous about its future existence. So that's why we're seeing these crises in the greater Middle East, because Iran is feeling insecure itself. But we can't allow Iran to project that onto other people. Otherwise, the whole greater Middle East will be ablaze.
Listen, always a pleasure, Chris. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's really important to put that out there because there are questions about our defence capability and what we should do with our military. But there's no doubt, if you look around the world, you look at Ukraine, you look at the Middle East, you look at Gaza, you look at what the Houthi rebels are doing, there is that axis and we need to be aware of it, whether people like it or not. Chris Parry, thank you as ever. Right.